Hello guys, and welcome back to another video. Firstly, I'd like to thank all my previous subscribers for liking and sharing my videos. It does really help, so thank you for that. And I'd like to thank the new subscribers as well for subscribing, so I do appreciate it. Also, I'd like to thank everyone in total because you've got me to a lovely 1.05k subscribers. So thank you very much for that, guys. I really do appreciate it. So please do carry on liking and sharing my work, and maybe, yeah, send it to one of your friends or your colleagues that are stuck, and maybe I can help them. As you guys know, I like to go through the comments and find a particular comment and try to create a video on it. I know it's been overdue now. I've been really busy with work, so I've not been able to create as many videos as I'd like. But this comment in particular by Andreas Felipe Tovar Castro 9222. Hope I pronounced your name right, my friend. He messaged saying, "Hi, I love your videos. Thank you very much, my friend. Can you please show me how to, or can you please show how to add texture?" This is something that we're going to be covering today. The renderer of choice is Arnold. I know there's a few other comments here that have been a bit similar, like Andrea here. I would love to see a tutorial for the materials. He wanted me to use Octane, but I'm not really a big fan of Octane. I've used it a few times, but I prefer Arnold. And I've used Redshift as well, and Redshift's a good renderer as well. So they're all pretty much boiled down to the exact same thing. It's just a few different nodes. Maybe in the future I can go into Octane and Redshift, but for now I'm going to stick with Arnold. Let's jump straight into Cinema4D. I'm today going to provide you a project, some project files should I say, which is going to contain this cloth, and you'll see these lovely little dots which are thinking particles. And yeah, they are easily renderable, so I'll just write TP on here where it says clean. I'm going to write cloth just so that I know what's going on, and we can call this cloth group just so I know what's going on. Right, okay, so first few things I've done is I've turned off the world axis and work plane, just so that I don't have the grids showing. And when you do import this in, guys, because it's an alembic, which is a .abc file, scale it up to 1 meter. On the import options, you'll be able to see it says scale, the units of measurement you want to import the file in, and just change that to 1 meter. Otherwise, it's going to be quite small. So now that we've got this mesh, I am going to quickly show you a few things. First of all, I am not a big fan of the way these creases are on this cloth because it's not a very high resolution mesh, as you can see. And another thing is I have given you some animation to play with. So if you guys do render this fully out, please do tag me on my Instagram, which is @Redila. It's in the description box down below, so you can get it from there. And yeah, I'd love to see some of the work that you guys have rendered out using this technique and using this project file. Now let's go back into this cloth. So click on this cloth, and if we keep Alt pressed and press this key over here, it's the subdivision surface generator. By clicking, should I say, this button with the Alt key pressed, you will actually create it as a parent. I'm just going to change this to SDS, and that basically, as you can see, has sort of given more resolution to the cloth. I'm not a big fan on how it's looking though. It's got these dimps, so we can change from Catmull Clark, which is an algorithm, and we can change that, and I believe that was his name as well. It's something Clark. We're going to change it to Open Subdiv Loop. I don't think that was the guy's name. I think that's just an algorithm as well. But if you click that, we get a lot nicer sort of smoothing going on. And we can do a little quick test render. So I'm just going to throw in an Arnold sky and press play. Everything should be super overexposed. Now, since we're here, we'll quickly go over what we can do with these thinking particles. As you can see, it's displayed as sprites or circles. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on it, and there's two methods. We can either press Alt C and search Arnold parameters, which is there, and that will turn it into spheres. Or if you've got a shortcut key, or you've set you know, this tag here or this icon as a custom shelf button, you can click on that and that'll do the same. Then what we want to do is where it says radius multiplier, we want to say 1.5 and oops, sorry, 0.15, and then that should take it to the correct size, which is, as you can see, shown. Now obviously if you press play, you will be able to see they fall in, they are grains, and even though they might come up as pluses here, they are actually moving and interacting with the cloth. Now the issue you're going to have is if you try to put some sort of texture on here, if it's a simple texture like a metal, it'll be perfectly fine. But if you try to put something on there that's going to have a pattern, you're going to have an issue called texture swimming. And that's because these are actually particle points and not a mesh. Therefore, it doesn't actually have UV coordinates. Whereas the cloth, I have UV'd. So you will be able to put a pattern on there and, you know, expect the result not to have any sort of swimming textures or textures that move about. Yeah, so now what we can do is we can now go into the texture portion of it. There's two ways of texturing. I thought I'd quickly go through this. There's the way that I've set, which is I double click and it creates a node, and that is only because if you go into render and go into underneath where it says configure, you'll see node spaces, and I've selected Arnold. That's why it is currently, when I double click, it brings up this. Another way is to go on to create Arnold, surface and standard surface, but they both work in different space. And what I mean by that is the standard surface works in the Arnold shader network, and in this network this is sort of the legacy shader, and it works similar. It's just an older version of it. It's still perfectly adequate to do any sort of task you want, but the one I use is the node one. I've only just sort of started exploring it and using it. Before I was using the network shader or the network editor. So now that we've created this, what we want to do is we want to attach it to the mesh that we are going to texture, which is going to be this. And when we go into it here, we need to create a standard surface. So if you press C on the keyboard, that will bring up this network box or browser in which you can search for the nodes, and then you type in standard surface and this will come up. Now unfortunately I'm not going to be able to provide you textures, because these textures, some of them I've paid for and I'm not allowed to distribute them. Last thing I want to do is get sued. So I'm just going to bring them textures in now. Just bear with me 1 second whilst I just navigate through my directory and bring them up. Now we've got the textures in. All we need to do is connect them correctly. So I've just named these so that you can understand them a bit better. So the first one is going to be color, which is quite simple. It can just go into color like so. And then we've got the others. Before we go into the others, I just want to quickly show you something. What will happen is if I just connect it and press play, we will get this, which looks horrible unless that's the scale of the cloth that you are wanting to texture. The thing that you're going to find is when you bring in a texture, it's not going to map it to how you want it to look, if that makes any sense. It's not going to map it to the size of the actual cloth. It's going to map it to the texture size. So because it's just taking this 4K resolution and it's just putting it straight onto the mesh, it looks a bit janky and it looks like the patterns are really big. If that's something you're going for, fair enough, but because we want it to look a bit more realistic and a bit more like how cloth does, because cloth does constantly repeat, we can click on this tile, material tile over here, the material tag should I say, and if you scroll down you will see something called tiles U and tiles V, and what we can do is we can up this. So if I say 18 by 18, you will see now we've got something that looks a bit better. This, by the way, will only work if the texture that you bring in is seamless. What I mean by that is the texture has been created by the artist in such a way, or by yourself, that it can be repeated over and over again. And if it was put side by side, you wouldn't be able to find where the seam would be. Hence the meaning of seamless. So there's a few things we can do. If we didn't like the color of this, Arnold in the last few versions have brought this color correcting into the actual tile itself. So if you click on this image over here, we've got color correct and we press add, it will automatically add another node, in which then we can sort of adjust the hue shift and we can change the color. Now if the color that you're bringing in is black and white, this hue shift is not going to have near zero sort of effect on the actual color, because black and white, you can't really shift the colors on that. The thing I could recommend to you is, if you want the black to be white and the white to be black, is to use this invert, which I think will break it, which it has done. Yet it won't work for this particular method, but for another texture it will. So now we've got this, and it is super glossy, which I do not like. So I'm going to remove the roughness, or add to the roughness to remove the glossiness. And as you can see, it's starting to look a bit better. Lighting does play a big part. So what I like to do is I like to use first the overexposed lighting method, which is just the Arnold sky, and then I like to add on to it as we go along. So I like the way that looks. I think the pattern is a right size, and yeah, we can move on from there. So now what we're going to put in is the roughness, because I've already adjusted the roughness, so we might as well go in. And this roughness map over here is basically a picture that has black and white spots, you could say, or parts, and that defines on whether it's going to be bright or whether it's going to be dull. So what I'm going to do is click on this output here, bring it into here, and where you get this little box, we want to go into specular and then go into roughness. That's now going to sort of adjust the roughness as needed. You will see as I start connecting these nodes, if we go into the main standard surface, that you are unable to edit the actual color of it. You will still be able to get certain settings, but you will not be able to edit this parameter which used to show a color wheel before. Same with the roughness, you will not be able to adjust it in the sense of being able to make it more rough or less rough. It's all controlled by the map. Now let's move on to the next one, which is the normal. Now there's two ways of doing the normal. If it was a black and white image, you want to use something called a bump 2D or a bump 3D, which I'm going to show you quickly. I've just sort of moved it there. Is it on the first image? Yep. So what you want to do is press C and press bump. So bump 2D and bump 3D would be more ideal for black and white images that you want to use to bump. And what bump is, or normal map is it gives a different, it gives it a look of it being displaced without being displaced. So it's a good way of using less resources, and they use it more commonly in game engines where they try to put the higher resolution mesh and sort of bake it down into a lower resolution mesh. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a normal map. So bring up the normal map, and then all we're going to do is we're going to attach this output to input, and we're going to attach this output into here, and it's going to bring up another menu, and it's saying where do you want to apply it. We want to apply it into main, geometry, and normal. So it might be a bit hard to see, but it has given us extra resolution. It's given us these little fibers. It makes it feel like it is sort of woven or sewn, or it's been created in a cloth material. So if I delete these two, you'll be able to see that it'll go quite flat. And what them two do is they actually add shadow into these points that would be sort of in, and it basically gives it an illusion of it actually having that feeling. Now if you go into strength, you can up the strength, so depending on how much strength you want to add or how much you want to multiply the map by, sometimes the multiplication can ruin it and start showing some artifacts which you might not want to see. So I left the hardest for last because this one you have to tinker a few more settings. This is the displace, which is the displacement. This actually uses the mesh and it pushes parts of the mesh to get it looking as it should. Now this displacement has been created especially for this particular material, and it's going to now push and pull parts to give it depth. So what we can do here is if I type in displacement and bring in the node, we've brought in the displacement node, and what we want to do here is we want to put this into normal displacement, and straight away you're going to say what the hell has happened here, and that is because of two reasons. The first reason is you need to also put an Arnold tag on this. You need to put it actually on the mesh, should I say, and then this material needs to be on the mesh as well. So let's click on this Arnold tag and go to displacement. It is now on the height of 10 centimeters. That's why it's going crazy. If we reduce it to 1, it will reduce it and try to only push up the displacement by 1 centimeter. And the scalar 0 value, you need to have it at 0.5. I like to put it at half of whatever the height is, and then where it says auto bump, always select this. Will retain a lot of detail in there and give you a better overall displacement. So you can play about with this now. As you can see, by bumping it up and bumping it down, you're going to get more extreme sort of displacement. What you also want to do is, let's bring this down to 1 again, and what you want to do is, if you're using displacement, sometimes it's better to also subdivide inside of Arnold tag, which does it on the fly. It doesn't affect the viewport, it just it takes a bit more longer on the rendering side, but it does it on the rendering side. So if I go to Cat Clark and put the iterations to 1, so it'll be 2 of the previous iterations plus the 1, and that should give me a higher resolution mesh. We've got this lovely cloth with all the maps attached, as you can see there. Is you click on the Arnold sky, you click on main, and where it says here, you click on this button over here. So you'll have a clear sort of button here, which you can scroll here. You've got this drop down, and you can use constant texture or material. If you want to bring in a texture, you press texture and you press this button over here. It will load up your explorer and you can pick the texture that you want. You can download loads of free HDRIs from Polyhaven, and they're absolutely free. They've got a really nice selection of HDRIs, so you can check their website out. But going back to this, we've got the Arnold sky, and now we've got this cloth fully textured, and now we're going to move on to these points. So the points, like I said, we want to keep it quite simple, and the reason for that is because they are points, and because it's not actually a physical mesh, you're going to have issues with texture swimming. So I'm just going to create a standard surface, and I'm going to turn it to a metal. And as you can see, look at that, look how lovely that looks already. And then I'm going to change it from metal presets, from custom, to, let's try platinum. Platinum sort of dulls the metal a bit. You can try iron. Even though these might not look different, they actually are. We've got gold, we've got copper. I like copper, it's like a faded gold. It suits the color of this sort of cloth as well. Maybe it's blending in a bit too well. We want it to be a bit more contrasty. Use magnesium. I'm gonna let you guys play around with this. You can use mercury. You got loads of choices here. I'm gonna pick I think I like copper. I'm gonna pick copper, but you can change the color. So copper would be what it sets the color to, and I believe, if I'm correct, does it change the roughness? No, it doesn't. So this is just basically a quick color swatch that it changes it to, relevant to the color of copper. And you can obviously create it and make it a bit more dull. So if I zoom in here, you'll be able to see that it's losing its shine. And as we get to 1, it's completely flat, and as we get to 0, it's ridiculously shiny. And as you know, in the real world, nothing is completely 100% reflective, unless it's a mirror made out of mercury or something. But if we go into roughness and adjust it to what you'd like, and then you don't have to use metal, you can use plastic. Plastic would look better with more roughness, because plastic does have a nice shine. You can change the color. You can also change the color of the specular, which is the light that is actually bouncing back off or being shown inside the specular. So if we change this to purple, you'll get a hint of purple. You might not be able to see it straight away, but when the renderer is loading, you will be able to see a hint of purple. But we are going to take it back to the color we had. It's usually set on white. You can change it to glass. You'll have to give it a few seconds whilst glass compiles, but you can set it to glass. And then with the glass, you want to turn up the roughness a bit to create that sort of cloudiness of the glass. Now, what it is with glass and somewhat metal, and especially with subsurface scattering, they are very resource intensive, and they need a lot of samples to clear this noise. So yeah guys, this was it for the simple rendering tutorial in Arnold. Please do like, share, subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.